anything about politics. I am here to answer all of your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So, this is the show where you can ask all of your questions about politics without any kind of fear of getting roasted or judged or debated or anything like that. I don't believe in debates. I don't think that they are productive. So I don't do them. And so if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for a show on on the internet where people yell at each other and call each other names and call each other stupid, that is not this show. This is just good faith engagement in all of your questions about politics. And I know that things are really weird with politics these days. There's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of propaganda. And so this is the show where you can come and we can all figure out what's going on together. And then hopefully we'll have a shared reality for the first time in decades. What's up, Sonia? Great to see you again. So yeah, any questions about politics, just throw them in the chat. What's up, it's the Rocketeer. Great to see you again. Good morning to you too, JP. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, or something on the outskirts. There's no such thing as a dumb question or a too far left question or too far right question. Fletch Lives Again says, this whistleblower thing seems super juicy. Yeah, my theory about this is that the head of what is fucking Tulsi doing? National security or something? I forget what her DHS. No, that's not it. I mean, my theory is that she's talking to Russia about shit that she's not supposed to be. William Tell says, you are not old enough to remember Howell Cosell at the '68 Olympics. That is accurate, William Tell. I was born in '79, so that is definitely before my time. But I remember Howard Cosell. I remember Howard Cosell. It's a little bit more like a Cary Grant. Anyways, Director of National Intelligence, thank you. Yeah, potentially, our Director of National Intelligence is talking to the Russians, which is concerning. El Toro Barro Loco says, why hasn't the FBI been following up and interviewing more people on the Epstein files? So there's a couple of things going on there, El Toro. The people that are in charge of the FBI right now are Trump loyalists, meaning that they are not going to do anything that Donald Trump doesn't want them to do. Like the information in the files could directly implicate Trump in PDF activity, and they will not pursue any kind of legal, actions against him or any of his buddies, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the reason why that's happening. El Toro says, so why didn't they do it during the Biden years? So it was a long legal process to try to get those files out. There were a bunch of reasons, but Democrats did make a push to get this information out to the public in 2019, in 2020, and 2023, I believe. And you can Google Ro Khanna. He's the guy who co-authored the Epstein Disclosure Act. He is on record saying that they've been trying to do this for a long time. Dark Comedy says, I'm going to guess you would say Epstein was not Mossad. Good luck explaining that. I mean, there's no evidence to say that he was or wasn't. It's possible that he's working with a lot of intelligence agencies. Specifically Mossad, I don't know. I don't think anybody does. Cody says, Crazy hasn't released the files when he ran on it. It's because every one of them are crooks. Yeah, potentially. El Toro says, do you think this is more of an elites versus commoners or left versus right? This is elites versus commoners. Jackson P says, what's your opinion on post-labor economics? There's going to be, best case scenario is once there are no more jobs, everything becomes free. But I don't think that that's what's going to happen. And even if we do eventually get there, a lot of people are going to get hurt and a lot of people are going to die getting to there, because we are going to be living through an era of there not being any jobs and a bunch of rich assholes telling us, if you don't want to starve to death in the street, then go get a job. Ooh, lady, let's see here. El Toro Perro Locos, but it is important to recognize, you asked, is this elites versus commoners or left versus right? It is elites versus commoners, but the people that are in charge of the government right now are the Republican Party. Like, they are the right. So the work that is being done to protect the billionaire parasite class is being done by the Republican Party. So I do take issue sometimes where people say, like, it's not about left versus right, it's about rich versus the rest of us. But I'm like, yeah, but the right is protecting the rich. Like, the right is working with the rich. So it's kind of both. No says, you seem pretty comfortable. I am pretty comfortable in my chair. I'm in my PJs. All right, the fixer Mike asking all the really important political questions. Did you get a haircut? You should cherish someday. It betrays you. That's very funny. Yes, I did get a haircut. What's up, Ecuadorian? Good to see you again. It's the Rocketeer. Says Berenstein Farms remembers. It's very funny. All right, Diego Vargas says, are you running for office soon? If yes, what position? I have exactly 0 plans for that. I'm going to be going back on the road at the end of this year. My wife's having a baby. My plate is full. Yakov says, why are people protesting ICE, the enforcement of law, instead of Congress, the writers of the law? Because ICE and Customs and Border Patrol are actively breaking the laws that Congress wrote. So ICE and Customs and Border Patrol are not just like obeying the letter of the law. In fact, they have ignored or disobeyed a record number of legal orders from judges. Yakov, does that answer your question? Robert Dominguez says, Dems had the Epstein files. If Trump did anything, don't you think they would have released it? Robert Dominguez, if you check out Ro Khanna, he's one of the representatives who co-authored the Epstein Disclosure Act. He said and outlined in great detail all the efforts that Democrats made to have this information public from 2019 through the Biden administration. So the fact that Democrats were not able to release that information over 5 years is not evidence that Trump is innocent. It is evidence that the elites were eliting. Walk Talk says, does Trump speak Russian? I mean, he barely speaks English. Kate says, the argue with a person who has renounced reason is like administering medicine to a dead person. I generally agree with that. Dr. Mantis Toboggan says, I can't wait to see the body cams. I mean, the reason why we have accountability for certain people in ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, the reason why we have Tom Homan instead of, 1/3 Reich Greg Bovino in Minnesota right now, the reason why we have fewer ICE agents and BPB officers is because we caught shit on film. And so I've heard a lot of people criticizing the demand for body cameras, like, oh, so we can just watch them do their murders now instead of it happening in darkness. Yeah, it's a really good point. Okay. Yakov says mandatory detention, removals, and deportations are written law. Legislation could change this. No, Yakov, no. Ignoring people's due process, deportations without cause, detention without cause, like all of this is against the law. So that's not what people are upset about. Detaining people while they are awaiting trial or removing people from the country because they are here illegally and have done a bunch of crimes, like that is not what's upsetting us. What's upsetting us is there are people that ICE is beating the shit out of and torturing and holding without any kind of charges whatsoever. There are people that ICE is just holding in detention facilities, and then the judge is saying that person doesn't deserve to be in detention, let him go. And ICE is refusing to let that person go. And they're trying to get that person to self-deport by saying, like, yeah, this judge is not coming to your defense, man. Sorry about that. Fabio says, nothing is against the law. Murder's against the law. Or Ski Bum says, quit getting in their way. No. So long as they are violating people's civil rights, then I refuse to get out of their way. Kate says, ICE was not looking for Renee or Alex. Alex and Renee were looking for ICE. Yeah, I don't know what that means, though. Yakov says, 3 million deported under Obama, same agency, same tactics. No, not same agencies, not same tactics. Yakov, Yakov, I'm going to be real with you. I think you're full of shit. I don't think that you actually believe any of this stuff. I think you're either being paid to put it out there or you got tricked by some propaganda, and so now you're here to push your propaganda as well. So congratulations, you're in question jail. If you don't ask a question, I'm going to boot you. You have exactly 1 strike left. Yakov says, Tom Homan was Obama's border czar. Congratulations, that's your 1 strike. Anything else that you say that is not a question, you're out of here. Or Ski Bum says, they won't violate civil rights if they aren't getting in the way. No, they are violating people's civil rights, even the people who aren't getting in the way. So you're wrong there, or Ski Bum. Also, you're also in question jail. Ask a question or you're out of here. Dr. Mantis Toboggan says, you don't know what that means? I don't remember what you said that necessitates that comment. Shark Hornet says, SCOTUS says otherwise. No? About what? Real Benda asks, did you get a haircut? Yes, I did get a haircut. You guys are fascinated with my haircut. John Abbott says, what portion of the I Can't Enjoy the Super Bowl halftime show if it's all in Spanish cohort do you think are millennials who grew up doing the Macarena in PE class? What an excellent question. I don't know the answer to that. JP says, question jail, 2. Yes, we got 2 people in question jail. Rim says, notice how you won't answer my question. I didn't see it. The Vixer Mice says, since you're going on the road soon, do you ever hit Missouri? I've definitely been to Missouri. I don't have Missouri on the schedule at any time soon. Rim says, how many people do you know who are employed by poor people? I don't know, Rim. Do you think that jobs only exist because rich people bestow them onto us out of the graciousness of their heart, or do you think the workers are the ones that actually create the value? Or Ski Bum says, were Renee and Freddie protesting peacefully? Yes, they were. Alrighty. The Truth Tells says, thoughts on the files? I think it made me go further to the right. What a weird thing to say, considering that there are a lot of right-wing people in the files and that the Republican Party is currently redacting information on perpetrators. So you're also sus as hell, the Truth Tellers officials. Milky Man says, pro-life or pro-choice? I'm pro-choice, but even if you're pro-life, you should still vote for Democrats because Democratic policies actually decrease the number of abortions. Republican policies do not stop abortion. They don't even decrease the number of abortions. They just make pregnancy more dangerous for women. Alrighty, it's the Rocketeer says, if we get 4 in question jail, then we get a free sandwich. No, you do not. Alrighty, excellent start to the day, everybody. Welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. Snow Sniffer says, do you goon? No, I do not. The Truth Official says, like nationalists further to the right. That's a weird thing to say. Uncle Hippie says, are you disappointed that the Super Bowl interfered with the Bad Bunny concert? No, I was happy that the Seahawks won. Seahawks? Yeah, that's what the Seattle team was. Yeah, I'm happy that they won. Bad Bunny, that show was dope as hell. Yakov says, would admitting Democrats and Republicans both signed immigration laws hurt your party? No. I mean, Democrats and Republicans have both signed immigration laws, but only one party wrote an immigration bill with Democrats and then killed their own bill because Trump told them not to because he wanted to run on immigration as an issue. Great question, though, Yakov. Thank you for being part of the conversation. Or Ski Bum says, I didn't think blocking ICE vehicles with your car is a peaceful protest. What are the limits? The limits are violence and property destruction. Yakov says, what about admitting that both enforce those same laws? Sure. Again, you're not, the things that you are saying, Yakov, are not proving anything. Joe Tape says, are you religious? No. Gordy says, thoughts on abolishing ICE? I'm for it. Real Benda says, what about showing women doing nails and men playing dominoes seemed a negative stereotype? I mean, you're allowed to do whatever stereotypes you want if you are the thing, in my opinion. Also, they were having fun, like they were saying, this is a part of our culture, and these are people enjoying themselves, Robbie says, why are the left stuck on the equality of life when the right just wants closed borders? I mean, the borders were never open during the Biden administration, and they're closed now, and people's quality of life is continuing to go down. So, maybe we can fix the quality of life problem since apparently the border problem is fixed. Larva Lee says, how do you feel about the current corporate tax rate? Not high enough. Can says, Democrat son or Republican daughter? Democrat son. Robbie did that one already. Daniel just said Israel. That's not a question. Larva Lee says, I already did that one. Yakov says, it proves that both parties are guilty of the same thing. No, it is not, Yakov. When Democrats were in charge, if ICE murdered civilians, then Democrats would have prosecuted the ICE agents who murdered civilians. Republicans are in charge now, and ICE and CPB are murdering civilians. And instead of investigating it, they are burying it, and they're saying that the civilians that ICE murdered and CPB murdered were domestic terrorists who were there to do targeted assassinations. And they said this with zero proof and with zero investigation, Yakov. So you can miss me with this both sides bullshit. You are back in question jail. Again, the next thing you have to say is a question or you're out of here. Gordy says, are you into spiritual theories? No, I believe that there are more things between heaven and earth that are dreamt of in your philosophies. Shub says, why is it so hard to be a good president? Like, put me in the Oval Office. We've had good presidents. The problem is that there are a lot of people out there with a ton of money who want you to think that good presidents were bad presidents. And so they put out a whole bunch of misinformation and propaganda about good presidents. to make you think that there are no good presidents. I am not running for any office in 28. The Truth Teller officials. J Money says, that was a great video that Trump showed during the Lion King impersonation. Your thoughts? What? I have no idea what you're talking about. Gordy, thoughts on Graham Plattner? I like him a lot. I'm not a resident of Maine, though, so it is not up to me to, for him. I don't decide whether or not he wins his primary. Yakov says, why weren't there mass protests under Democratic enforcement? Because, Yakov, ICE and Border Patrol agents were not murdering citizens. They were not detaining citizens and veterans and Native Americans. End of story. P.S. says, do you think we're likely to go into a revolution in America? I mean, I guess it depends on how you define a revolution. The Tellers of Official says, thoughts on Israel? I am exactly as sympathetic and for the citizens of Israel as I am the citizens of Palestine and Russia and Iran and France and Germany. The government of Israel is a fucking shit show. It is a nightmare. Netanyahu is a war criminal. He is perpetrating a genocide on the people of Palestine. Yakov says, deported in chief, children in cages, no protest. Congratulations, you are out of here. You're not listening to what I'm saying. All right, J Money says, you don't know politics if you haven't seen the Trump video showing all politicians as animals. Oh, yeah, I did see that video. Yeah, it was racist. Milky Man says, where are your ancestors from? Italy and Poland. Or Ski Bum says, what's the difference between blocking an ICE police vehicle and an ambulance? An ambulance is trying to save a person's life, and an ICE vehicle is trying to murder a civilian. Gordy says, do you think the Fort Laramie Treaty is ever going to be brought to court? I do not know anything about that. All right, Ecuadorian long comment says, yesterday's halftime show was beautiful, proud Latino here, and what's it going to take to get MAGA to get over what they don't understand? I think we have to do a couple things, Ecuadorian. We need to, number one, talk to people in person, and number two, ignore people who are full of shit on the internet because it's not doing anything. We're not convincing MAGA by yelling at people on the internet. We are convincing MAGA by converting more people in person. P.S. Locally says, thank you for being so educated. Thank you. Patriot says, gross to talk about federal agents like that. I think it's gross that they murdered a couple people. Patriots. What do you think is worse? Do you think it's worse that I say that they murdered people, or do you think them murdering people was worse, Patriots? Let me know what you think about that. Nitsuan says, how does one stop an empire from crumbling? I'm doing the work. Nitsuan, and if you want to know what the work is, go to my Discord. Link is in the bio. I have a whole thread describing what the work is. Gordy says, prediction for the Trump administration handling of the up-and-coming midterms. So Trump is going to try to federalize elections, and he's going to try to cancel the midterms. He is not legally capable of doing either of those things. So instead, what he's going to try to do is, number one, infiltrate our voting systems. That's part of the reason why they did that raid in Georgia, was to give more access to the way that our voting systems work so they could potentially hack into machines and change vote totals. They're potentially going to use ICE and CPB to intimidate, beat up, arrest, close roads in Democratic areas. They are trying to get access to voter rolls to potentially threaten or imprison people that regularly vote for Democrats. They're going to try to fuck with the midterms. Whether or not they are successful is entirely up to us. So if we do the work, they will be not successful. But if we sit on our hands and just hope and pray that, we win the midterms, then we're fucked. Okay, J Money says, how do you think mortgage rates will do in the few years under Trump? They have been dropping slowly. I mean, the fact that inflation is going back up means that the Fed does not believe it is smart to continue lowering interest rates. The last announcement they made was that they were keeping interest rates where they were. Unfortunately, the Trump administration seems intent on replacing independent people at the Fed with Trump lackeys who will lower rates, even though it will spike inflation and devalue the dollar and will price everybody out of being able to exist in this country. Gaming Goob says, what are your thoughts on the Orsini family? I don't know who they are. Dionys says, as a Republican, I hope the Dems win in 28 so the MAGA cult dies. What about 26, man? We got to win 26 too. Flamingo Mo says, what are the details of the SAVE Act? I'm not 100% sure. I know that it's a very restrictive voting bill that is written in such a way that women who have gotten married and changed their names will then have a very difficult time being able to vote. All right, J Money. So I'm a loan officer. So you think lowering rates of mortgages will happen pretty fast, which is great. I didn't say that. Dan Blackburn says generational home ownership gulf will almost inevitably worsen under Trump. I believe that is accurate. The Truth Teller's official says supposedly there was an agent from Israel who got caught up in an underage CIA sting. I have no idea if that is true or not. DA Goat says, well, isn't BRICS the thing devaluing the dollar the most, not lower interest rates? No, Trump's trade war is the thing that is devaluing the dollar the most. I do not believe. I mean, you could argue that BRICS is a part of that equation, but part of the reason why what Trump is doing with tariffs and trade wars is bringing down the dollar is because BRICS are there to have better trade relationships with all of our allies than we are currently having. Gaming Goob says, do you think it's time to dismantle the two-party system? I don't think it's time to dismantle the two-party system. I think that the two-party system is extremely flawed, but it gets blamed for a bunch of things that are not necessarily its fault. If you want to get rid of the two-party system, you need ranked choice voting, and the Republican Party is trying to make ranked choice voting illegal. I can give you the name of the House resolution if you want to Google it, but that's a fact. The Democratic Party is open to ranked choice voting, so if you want out of the two-party system, you need ranked choice voting. If you want ranked choice voting, you got to vote for Democrats. The road to the solution for all of the problems with our democracy, be it cost of living, being electoral issues, is by voting for the Democratic Party. I just got reported for misinformation, which is complete and utter bullshit because I haven't said anything that's misinformation. My suspicion is that I have right-wing people in my chat who are just trying to make it so that the things I'm saying are not heard because they do not like it when people on the left tell the truth. So I am going to stop and restart my TikTok live. So if you're watching on TikTok, I hope that you will come right back. But I mean, my numbers are actually pretty good right now. We'll see if they go down, but that is a thing that may or may not happen on the live stream relatively soon. We'll keep an eye on that. Meech says, yeah, bro, we're better than the other guy. Has worked so well. For Democrats, at what point you're trying to make here. Let's see here. Benda says, can you explain why ranked choice voting works in more detail? Absolutely. So ranked choice voting is instead of voting for one person only, you are able to vote for everybody, but put them in the order that you would like them in. So let's say you got three candidates. You got Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump. And your favorite candidate is Bernie Sanders, but you don't want to vote for him because you're worried that if you do, Hillary Clinton won't have enough votes to beat Donald Trump, and Bernie Sanders will also not have enough votes to beat Donald Trump. If you put the two of them together, the Clinton votes and the Bernie votes, they would beat Donald Trump, but, you know, so you kind of have to you have to kind of like game out your vote in a way. So that's where ranked choice voting comes in, where if you want to vote for Bernie Sanders in a way that doesn't elect Donald Trump, you could say, well, Bernie Sanders is my first choice, but Hillary Clinton is my second choice. And therefore, if nobody reaches like the certain vote total, they would then sort of like add together all the points from the second votes as well. Okay. All right. Now we're down to 70 people in the TikTok. So I am going to stop and restart the TikTok live stream. If you're watching this on TikTok right now, please come back immediately. I will be right back. Coming right back, everybody. Don't go nowhere. All right, John Abbott says the SAVE Act also doesn't recognize college IDs as valid voter IDs, so new out-of-state college students will have to travel home to vote if they haven't lived there long enough to change residency, even if the college is a state university. Yeah, more voter suppression bullshit. John Abbott speaking truth over here. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Ask Me Anything About Politics. I'm here to answer all your questions about politics, regardless of if you are left-wing or right-wing. Everybody is welcome here. Gaming Goob says, I myself am a groper. What do you think our most flawed ways of thinking are? I mean, I guess it would depend. You know, as far as I understand it, groypers are fans of Nick Fuentes, who is a self-described anti-Semite and misogynist and racist. Do you believe in those ideologies, Gaming Goob? Because if so, I find that to be pretty shitty. You know, like And I hope that you are open to arguments to not be a groyper going forward. Dionys says, I hate when the Dems say they won Texas only because they won a Senate seat in Texas. Well, you will never hear me say that, Dionys. I am not the one pounding that symbol, or however the expression goes. I'm not the one pounding that drum. I am the one saying that this is great, but there's a ton of work to do, and we cannot bet on Texas. All right, welcome everybody to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jared, and I'm here to answer all your questions about politics, regardless of how simple or complicated the question might be, regardless of if you are a left-wing person or a right-wing person. Everybody is welcome here. Authentically Her says, Maxwell is looking for a pardon to testify. Trump did not participate with Epstein. Is that legal? No, it is not legal, but Trump has been trading pardons for cash and favors even since his first term. So, you know, like we're when are we going to not be okay with the Republican Party not holding their own presidents accountable, guys? Like, when is that going to be an issue that causes you to vote against Republicans and for Democrats, guys? Sherlock Holmes says, is this a debate live? This is not a debate live. This is just a Ask Me Anything About Politics live, and I answer your questions. Sophia says, what are your views on tariffs? Tariffs are a very useful economic tool so long as they are wielded very specifically and carefully, like a scalpel. But the problem is Trump is not doing that. Trump is using it like a shotgun. He is using it with all of the subtlety of a sledgehammer and a nuclear bomb. So what you're supposed to do is say, we are tariffing this one thing in this one country because we believe this country is doing something that is economically cheating. But instead, Trump is saying, I'm going to do tariffs on the whole world, and everybody can go S my D, I guess. Issa says, how do you feel about ICE? I'm against them. Bone Crusher says, no. What a weird thing to say. Dionys says, did Maxwell testify yet? No. PS Locally Brun says, I figured out how to unredact the files. If I release it with victim names censored, is it... I don't know what the answer to that... I don't know what the end of that question is. Alrighty. Ricky Mahoney says, best president of your lifetime? I probably give it to either Obama or Biden. They both did things that were great. Obama was a much better public speaker, and he was much more inspirational. Biden was able to do more progressive things because he was a white man, and also he had a lot of political favors saved up from all of his time in the Senate, and also he was president in 2020 as opposed to being president in 2008. Bone Crusher says, you don't know anything about tariffs. Congratulations, Bone Crusher. You're in question jail. If you don't ask a question with your next comment, you are out of here. Gaming Goop says, do you think the occult have influence in American politics? No, I do not. Real Bendis says, with ranked voting, is there a minimum percentage to be on the ballot? Top 3, top 10. Those specifics I am unfamiliar with, Real Benda. I think it really depends on which state or which principality is enacting that legislation. Gordy says, will the U.S. dollar ever get by gold again? Probably not, but that's a little over my head. IDK says, are we you MAGA? I am not MAGA. We are not MAGA. I hope that you are not MAGA. Ooh, righty. Welcome, everybody, to Ask Me Anything About Politics. I'm here to answer your questions about politics. Asen says, thoughts on JFK? Not sure you were alive when he was in office. I was not. How old do you think I am? But he seemed like a good guy. You know, don't love everything, but you know, progressive champion, signed some good legislation, did the right thing where racism is concerned. D says, do you think Epstein is actually dead? Yes, but I don't think that he did it himself. New Sarah says, opinion on Berlusconi? I do not remember. Jop says, do you know Mitch about UK politics? I do not know much about UK politics. I am Labour, though. Real Bendis says, what minimum percentage would you support in presidential ranked ballots? I haven't even thought about it. IDK says, would you say that you're a liberal, progressive, leftist, or socialist? I would say I'm a progressive Democrat. Gaslight says, thoughts on Gavin Newsom's hair? What products does he use? I think that's just all natural. I think just his masculine vibes emanating from his head. Ricky O'Mahony says, JFK was a terrific president, whether you liked him or not. You respected him, a great leader. All right, I'll take your word for it. Horn says, how do I come out to my MAGA parents? I guess I would just say carefully, and depending on how old you are, depending how MAGA your parents are, maybe you want to make sure you have a place where you can crash if things do not go well. Right. Diana says Berlusconi was a prime minister of Italy during the 90s and 2000s, and he was a friend of Putin. Well, I vaguely remember him. There was like corruption there, right? Bunga bunga parties. That sounds familiar to me. So yeah, not a fan. Core says, I wouldn't be, Jop says, I wouldn't be Labor nowadays. They are awful. I mean, they're better than the Tories, right? Gaming Goop says, do you think white peoples are to blame for today's problems in America? I don't think that white people in general are, but I think that certain white people probably are. Sophia says, thoughts on the Electoral College? I'm against it. D. Scott says, if the Tea Party led to MAGA, do you think the Groypers are next to take over the Republicans? Potentially. God help us if they do. Rise Zen says, MAGA has brain rot from GOP propaganda and conspiracies which avoid facts. Educate, don't debate. I generally agree with that. V Triggered says, are you Californian? If so, do the early polls worry you about our upcoming gubernatorial election? I do live in California now. I don't know if I would consider myself a Californian. I just moved here a couple of years ago. And I haven't seen any polls regarding the governor's race. Corn says, my stepdad voted for him. I'm scared, low-key. I mean, I think depending on how MAGA your parents are, then that is a completely normal reaction to have, And, I think that there are things emotionally and psychologically that you will benefit from by not having to hide who you really are. And so I feel for you if you feel like you're safer hiding that from your parents. But if that's, the thing that you think is the smarter decision, then I 100% respect that. One of the things that I think is valuable about the internet is that it can hopefully connect you with people who can help do this in a way that is as safe for you as humanly possible. So I would just say, I would encourage you to check out those places, All right, scroll down to the bottom of the TikTok comments because we got a little lost in the sauce there. V Trigger says the early polls are showing the true Republican candidates way ahead of their Democrat counterparts. I don't know. I guess I find that really hard to believe. I'll have to look into that. Gordy says, does the alcohol industry have too much influence on the lobbying against gardening? Yes, 100%. J Money says, why do you support enabling people on welfare to stay on welfare and to keep having kids as lottery? I don't support that, J Money. But here's my question. Do you think that people abusing the welfare system takes more money out of your pocket than giant corporations take out of your pockets? Answer me that, J Money. Let me know what you think about that. And if any of my mods see J Money's response, try to pin that for me so I don't miss it. Nunca Dome says, opinion on Friedman. Can you be more specific? Murr says, how do women support conservative MAGA when it goes against their gender? Makes no sense to me. Propaganda, misinformation, information bubbles, culture bubbles, that can be a hell of a drug. Diana says, I feel since social media were born, I believe, bipartisanship died. It didn't die organically. It died because people who wanted it to die put a lot of money for it to die. PS Locally says, did you hear about Trump suing the Department of Justice? How would that work? So because he is in charge of the government right now, but he is also a private business person, he can sue the government and then also tell the government to settle the lawsuit. So he's basically just stealing our tax dollars. He's stealing our tax dollars. That's the long and short of it. And Republicans who are in charge of Congress and the Supreme Court right now could stop him, and they are not. So they are culpable as well. I believe that this is all the information that you need for who you should be supporting in elections going forward. Not just that not just that Trump is stealing your money, but that Republicans are letting it happen. Either because they're down with it or because they're too scared of him to do anything about it. Jay Money says, yes, I do, because I personally have to deal with them as Uber driver. They waste my time and money. Well, Jay Money, I apologize, but you're wrong about that. You are losing way more money to giant corporation tax loopholes and subsidies than you do by people on welfare who are abusing the system. So if I were you, because here's the thing, us giving loopholes and tax cuts and subsidies to giant corporations does not help us nearly as much as giving welfare to the poor. So I would say, let the poor do their welfare fraud. It affects me almost zero. What am I going to, I'm paying an extra 50 cents a year in my taxes because of welfare fraud? Cool. I'd much rather pay $500 less a year in my taxes so that we're not subsidizing wildly profitable corporations like Walmart and ExxonMobil, Hayden Grail says, how about neither? there's this idea out there that I don't think not enough people know about, which is it more harmful to me, the voter, to stop fraud or let fraud happen? Because you got to think about how many people we have to employ to find and stop fraud. You have to think about how much bureaucracy we then need to heap on top of welfare systems in order to stop that fraud. And all of that comes at a cost to us. So really think about it. If it costs you 50 cents a year to allow welfare fraud to happen, but it costs you $100 a year to stop all welfare fraud, which one of those policies do you think is better? Are you so dogmatic about welfare fraud that you're going to insist on stopping it, even if it takes more money out of your pocket? J Money says, you don't understand how big of an issue it is to keep people enabled on welfare. That's terrible. I don't think you understand how big of an issue poverty is, J Money. I gotta be honest, guys. I'm getting a little heated right now, so I'm taking my internal temperature right now, and I'm going to just try to calm myself down, so that when J Money says things that I disagree with, I'm not going to be a jerk. I'm not going to be a jerk to the people that disagree with me. Space Plum, great to see you again, says, what do you think about Pam Bondi struggling to recruit new qualified lawyers at the DOJ because of a requirement that they serve the interests of Trump first and country second? Obviously, that is a massive concern. Obviously, that is huge. But it speaks to their own incompetence. Like, they can't get lawyers to do the things that they're trying to do legally, which hurts us. And it hurts the people that ICE is torturing and CBP are torturing, Yeah, I mean, it's wrong for so many reasons. It's wrong because now our government is understaffed. And now people are having to wait insanely long to be let out of jail when they did no crime. It's like, this is an example of an incompetent government, in addition to being a corrupt government and a fascist government. Like, they're doing nothing right. JP says, the trolls are touching the thermostat. Grandpa's getting overheated, guys. I'd love to object to be being called grandpa, but it's a fair hit. Sophia says, I'm curious on how the alcohol industry has an influence on gardening legislation. So I don't have the reporting top of mind, Sophia, but I can send it to you. Basically, if there is an industry that threatens your industry and you have the opportunity to make it illegal or less legal or harder to get, then you will generally do that. Like, for example, the fossil fuel industry has pushed governments to make it illegal or difficult to put solar panels on your house. Because the more solar panels that we have, the less money we give to the fossil fuel industry. I should also point out that this is all Republican shit. Like, Democrats this isn't part of the Democratic platform to allow the fossil fuel company and the alcohol industry to do this. It is severely in the Republican camp for that to happen. So yeah, I can send you the articles about how the alcohol industry has been trying to kneecap the gardening industry because they know that when more people garden, fewer people drink. There you go. Tree Man says, answer the question on why no voter ID. Excellent question. So the reason why no on voter ID is because it is strictly a voter suppression tactic. It solves no problem. There is no rampant voter fraud that exists in America. But what we do know is that the Republican Party has said out loud on record, I can send you the audio if you want, that they are using voter suppression tools like voter ID to win elections. All right. Here's my compromise, though, to every Republican person out there who wants voter ID: make IDs free and easy to get. Then I say, okay, on voter IDs. But I have a problem with voter ID policies if you are pairing that with shutting down DMVs in Democratic areas so that it's harder for people to get IDs. and making IDs $80 each when people can't afford that sometimes. Elphaba says, why no one talking about LRAD acoustic that permanently damaged hearing on protesters? I haven't read anything about that. Right. Scott said, DeSantis stole $10 million from Medicaid, then used it to run ads against illegal gardening. Well, isn't that interesting? Gordy says, do you support passing federal legislation to stop Monsanto's chicken harvesting practices? Ooh, Gordy, all the words in that sentence I vibe with. The problem is I don't know what the specific legislation says. Like, I would need to make sure that there are not things in that legislation that would similarly fuck over, farmers that are not Monsanto and shit like that. But I am aware that Monsanto is an evil company. I'm aware that factory farming is terrible for both animals and humans and the environment. So it's like, I'm about this. I'm about what you're talking about. I just don't know what that specific legislation is. Alrighty. No Hyper Fix says, you look kind of like Justin Trudeau. I'll take that as a compliment. That's a handsome man. Alrighty. JP says, anti-solar pro-coal is classic Koch brothers, easy to Google it. Yeah, and you can read the book Dark Money by Jane Mayer. Highly recommended. Murr says, well, Sophia drinks, so I'm assuming she supports what the alcohol industry does. Murr, we do not throw shade at people in the live stream who are asking questions in good faith, Murr. Dionysus says, are you on Twitch too? I simulcast, yes, on Twitch, TikTok, and YouTube. The Lua fam says, how much did Trump raise the standard deduction, which 90% and child tax credit? That I do not know, unfortunately, so sorry. I have to boot on that. It's the Rocketeer says, is this just them selling us out to the surveillance states? Thoughts on Discord announcing that they will set all profiles to teen-appropriate experience by default and requiring facial scans and IDs for 18-plus features? Is this just them selling us out to the surveillance states? So short answer is I don't know. I do think that there are people out there who are invested in keeping toxic information away from kids. I don't know if there is legislation out there right now that is doing that without also, acquiescing all of our information to the surveillance state. Yeah, I haven't heard anything about Discord being like a secretly shitty company, so my guess is that they're operating in good faith to try to keep kids safe, but I don't know. I couldn't tell you for sure. The Lua fam says, Trump almost doubled the standard deduction and child tax credit. I don't know what that means, Lua fam. Dianus says, the next president of the USA will have to work very hard to fix your foreign affairs. Accurate as hell. You said your foreign affairs. Where are you TikToking from, Dionysus? Ready. JP says, LRAD's long-range acoustic device used on Minnesota anti-ice in January. Snopes link in the Discord. Did Snopes find that it was accurate or not accurate, JP? You can go ahead and spoil that for me. Right. Dionysus says limitedly. Buongiorno. My family, my extended family. I have some extended family in Italy. My mom's mom was born in Italy. Kobe says, why can you enlist before you can vote? I'm pretty sure you can do both right around the same time. Like, enlistment happens at 18, voting happens at 18, right? Am I wrong about that? Kobe? Big D says, what did you think about the halftime show? I thought it was dope as hell. And, I hadn't heard a lot of Big Bunny before the halftime show, but it made me want to listen to more because it sounded dope as hell, as well as being a dope-ass show. All right. Kobe says, you can enlist at 17 and vote at 18. All right, but they probably can't ship you out until you're 18, and you probably can register at 17, depending on which state you're in. Kobe, let me know about that. All right, let's see here. Snopes says that it is true. So yeah, apparently the feds were using sound cannons to permanently damage the hearing of anti-ICE protesters. One more thing to put on the pile of shit to be mad at Republicans for and reasons to never vote for them ever again. Muzz King, 75 Corvette, Silver Moon, Ryzen, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. All right, let's move on to gift goal number 2. Torment says, why are people who aren't educated allowed to vote? We have a bad history in this country of fake literacy tests to try to suppress the vote. So Instead, we have said that everybody is allowed to vote so long as you are over the age of 18 and not a felon, and and a citizen of the country, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have some sort of civics level education before someone's allowed to vote, but the devil's in the details, and that could very easily be turned into a way of making it so that poor people or brown people can't vote, which, that's not great. We don't love that. Murr says, why does the South have the highest addiction rates, lowest education rates, and most poverty? Well, that is because red states and Republican politicians are incentivized to cut taxes for the wealthy and make up that budget deficit by cutting programs that deal with poverty, addiction, education, etc. It is the fault of Republican policies. It is the fault of trickle-down economics. It is the fault of rich people capturing our electoral systems. Triska D. Scott, thank you so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. Moving on to gift goal number 3. J Money says, what are your thoughts on a civil war within the U.S. come the next election? I do not believe that a civil war is going to happen. So long as people understand the value of peacefully protesting, of nonviolent resistance, then we will not have a civil war. Penguin San Diego says, hey, which Republican senator do you think has the fattest cheeks? Not going to answer that. Italiana says, but blue states carry red states. Yes, 100%. We financially carry red states because we put more money into the federal government, and the federal government uses that for programs in red states. But that does not mean that there are not things that the state tax dollars should be doing in red states that they are not doing, because they would much rather cut taxes for billionaires. 75 Corvette D. Scott Triska, thank you so much for helping me reach my third gift goal of the day. And you guys know what that means. That means it is finger hearts o'clock. Best time of the day. Finger hearts o'clocks. J Money says, who's being more violent protesting the Democrats or Republicans? I rest my case. You're wrong, J Money. You're wrong. And I gotta be honest, man, the I rest my case that you put, there were two sins in your comment. There was the word lately, where you are really trying to ignore things like January 6th and the Minnesota senators getting murdered and shit like that, and instead focusing on Democratic protests, which have been wildly nonviolent. Like, historically nonviolent. Basically 100% nonviolent. And then you ended it with the I rest my case. And that kind of like false smugness, like smugness where you're wrong and smug, it really got my goat, J Money. And so it is only because that started as a question that I was able to fucking cut some meat out of that I am allowing you to continue to stay. But just know that you're on extremely thin ice, J Money. You are on extremely thin ice. Do you care about being right, J Money, or are you trying to push a narrative? That's my question for you. Sincere question. Let me know if he responds and I miss it. Name Real says, why is something always going on in Minnesota? Well, there are a lot of Democrats that Donald Trump and Republicans hate who run that state. And also there are a lot of Somali immigrants that Republicans like to scapegoat. And so they are constantly putting money into propaganda and misinformation about that state so that people think that Democrats or Somali immigrants are ruining it. It is all fucking bullshit propaganda. All right, Jane Money says, I care about being right, man. I came here to learn, of course. Well, you don't say things like what you said above if you're trying to learn. You say things like you are trying to either get into a fight or spread misinformation. So ask a question. Brian Barbita, great to see you again, says, thoughts on Trump's racist video. I think that Trump doing wildly racist things and offensive things and trying to start fights with, like, people about the Super Bowl and shit like that, those are the distractions. And so I think we need to be focusing on the more substantive things. I don't think we need to see the headline, racist does racist shit. One of my regulars over on YouTube or Twitch often makes the analogy, headline, fork found in kitchen, to Trump doing some racist shit. So I'm like, yeah, it was gross. It was racist. He's not backing down because he wants us talking about that as opposed to, ICE and CBB and his corruption and his grift and the incompetence and the fascism. All right, Sophia says, what do you think about the filibuster? Filibuster's kind of stupid, Sophia. Like there are definitely times in history when it has saved us from administrations that were trying to do wildly inappropriate and undemocratic things, like during both Trump administrations, for example. But I think it's probably done more harm than good. The history of the filibuster exists to protect like slave owning states and Jim Crow shit. Actually, no, the filibuster didn't exist when slavery was around. So yeah, just Jim Crow filibuster. People call it the Jim Crow filibuster because it is the reason why we were not able to have certain civil rights legislation. So yeah, rooted in racism, hurting the country. I say once we get Trump out of office, then let's get rid of the filibuster. Isaac says, do you think we should have open borders? No. Free Will Fit says, what's the most racist thing Trump has said? Behind closed doors, I'm sure the dude has said the N-word infinity times. Charlie says, what do you think about the gray pope? I don't know what the gray pope is. Oh, excellent question. So the filibuster is, Joey, did you ever see the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington? Joey, let me know. That is an example of a filibuster, is if you are in the Senate, you are able to stop all Senate business by standing on your feet and talking and talking and talking. And it is a way that Republicans have been trying to stop legislation being passed by the Democratic Party. Max Schmidt says, Biden said it to the public and no Democrat cared. Biden said what to the public? And no Democrat cared. Biden said the N-word to the public? I don't believe that is accurate. Ready. 18th Brooks says, what's your idea on soft bigotry of low expectations? That to me sounds like some right-wing argument against affirmative action. So I'm going to say bullshit. If that's what I think it is, then it's bullshit. Diana says, I think they should ban gerrymandering 100%. The Democratic Party did try to ban partisan and racial gerrymandering during Biden's term, but the Republican Party filibustered it, so it was not able to pass. It wasn't even able to get up for a vote. AJ says Biden was debatably more racist than Trump, LMAO. No, false. Zero, not even close. AJ, you're in question jail. Ask a question next or I'm going to boot you. Fudge Me says, do you believe segregation is self-inflicted with everyone jumping in groups against others? I believe that some of it is self-inflicted, but I believe that without the influence of things like money and politics, we eventually melt into each other. Like our groups all kind of blend together. But unfortunately, the power of the state and the billionaire class has been used to sort of like exacerbate the divisions between all the different classes and groups of people that exist in America. J. Money says, do you think Democrats will win in the next election? If so, explain who and how. Good Lord. If anybody's friends with this guy, does anybody want to explain what's wrong with his questions to him in case he doesn't know? I don't know how the Democrats will do in the next election. If the Trump administration and the Republican Party is not successful in all of their voter suppression and vote and cheating tactics, then I believe there will be a massive reaction to how pissed off Americans are about the Trump administration. It would probably be a bigger swing if Democrats were more popular, but as it stands, Trump and Republicans are in charge. Everybody is upset about what's happening, so they know exactly who's to blame. So most people are going to be voting against Republicans. I think that without interference of Republicans and the Trump administration trying to still suppress votes, whatever, that it would be a massive blue wave in 26. Scrolling down to the bottom, Isaac says, do you think MLK was as great as people say he was, not taking a side? Just wondering your opinion. I do. I think that we color history in certain ways as we learn about it. Resistance always seems impossible until it happens, then it seems inevitable. So we don't see all the work that people like MLK were doing in order to get the civil rights wins that he was responsible for. He cheated on his wife, which obviously not a great thing. But yeah, pretty substantive communicator and activist. I'm sure that historians can point out a bunch of shitty things that he did or said. But yeah, I would say, generally speaking, top notch. Sophia says, but without the filibuster, wouldn't the majority party always pass policies they want, which hurts both sides? You know, Sophia, and I think an argument could be made. Actually, let me start that sentence back over. What I would argue instead is that when you vote for a specific party into government, America is saying, let's try their policies. Now, there are certain exceptions to that where I think it's probably more damaging to pass those policies than to block those policies. For example, with the Republicans currently in charge, they might try to end birthright citizenship or federalize elections or make it illegal to be a Democrat or throw reporters in jail and shit like that. We obviously don't want to elect political parties that are able to pass legislation like that. I think the filibuster has stopped more good legislation from being passed than stopped bad legislation from being passed. Let America feel what it is like when one party's policies are able to get across the finish line. That's generally how I stand on that. I also think that partially what de-incentivizes people from being involved in politics is because they feel like nothing gets done. And part of the reason why nothing gets done is because of the filibuster. The filibuster makes it virtually impossible to get anything done. Notably, the Biden administration was able to get a bunch of things, which, again, Democrats never get any fucking credit for the incredible things that they do. Republicans never get any blame for the awful things that they do. So yeah, I believe that we have a uniquely dangerous president and Republican Party in charge right now. So I do not believe that now is the time to get rid of the filibuster. And I also don't believe that the Republican senators want to get rid of the filibuster, because I think that the Republican senators view the filibuster as the only thing left standing in the way of passing all of Trump's shitty legislation. 75 Corvette and Triska, thank you so much for helping me reach my first finger hearts goal of the day. Seaflon says, wouldn't this just lead to more bills being thrown out when the majority switches? Yes, but maybe we see people being really upset when legislation that they liked is being thrown out, and then they would start voting. Edmund says, well, you Democrats better get ready for the Civil War. It's coming in April. What a weird thing to say. Isaac says, are you religious, and does that play a factor in your views on politics? I am not religious, but I was raised Catholic, and that does influence my politics. You know, feed the hungry, heal the sick, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. There but for the grace of God go I. Love thy neighbor, turn the other cheek. You know, that's my politics. Diana says, I'm not insulting you, but you're glazing the Dems way too much. I disagree. I think that the Democratic Party gets dragged through the mud unfairly so much that I have to then undo all of that bullshit. Democrats never get any credit. Republicans never get any blame. We constantly are raising the bar for Democrats and lowering them for Republicans. The electoral systems themselves are biased against Democrats, in addition to our campaign finance laws being biased against Democrats. Social media, mainstream media, right-wing media, everything is pushing specific negative narratives around the Democratic Party. And I refuse to be a part of that fucking group of people that just falls for that bullshit. Because I am watching. I am seeing what is fucking happening. I am watching the bills that are getting passed by both parties at the state and federal level. And I'm seeing one party being good. Not great, not perfect, but good. And another party being unfucking believably psychotic. So I will not. I am not glazing the Democrats. I am trying to give them the credit that they deserve. All right, Joey says, depends on what you see. Both parties have loud people. Yes, Joey, but I'm not talking about the people within the parties. I am talking about the zeitgeist, generally speaking. Congratulations, J Money. You have officially annoyed me to the point where you are no longer in my live stream. You are a disgrace to the J Money moniker. As a J-named man who has at times been referred to as J Money, I officially revoke your title. You no longer are allowed to go by J Money. It is also inappropriate for somebody to call themselves J Money. when they are being serviced, when their mothers are being serviced sexually by myself. Thank you, Nikki. That's a very nice thing to say. Don Ray says, what exactly is psychotic? Give me a specific issue, and I will tell you how the Republican Party is psychotic about it. Alrighty. I've been ignoring my Twitch and YouTube too long, so let me see here. JP says J Money isn't looking for a fight, but is wearing boxing gloves. Accurate. Zay Miorca says, did something happen on 3rd and 4th of February? The Iran currency recovered that day, but will they ever recover? I don't know enough about that, so sorry about that. JP says, why do we get questions about a civil war? Do people not understand that it would ruin their lives regardless of outcome? I think that there are certain people who are good faith concerned about the possibility of a civil war. I think that there are certain people who are overly hype about a civil war because they wear stupid fucking shirts that say, if there's a civil war, I'm glad my side has the guns. And I also think that there are some people out there who are politically incentivized to push the idea of a civil war because it helps them politically. And they have a lot of money, so they're able to push those narratives. All right, Bound 2, was up back at you. All right. Damn straight, real, but I wear it with pride. All right, let me scroll up on this here. Dionysus says, what do you think about AIPAC? I'm against them, but I'm also against all well-funded right-wing lobbying organizations. I am equally as mad at AIPAC as I am at the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society. Joey says, as a Republican, I disagree with Trump a lot. There's a difference between MAGA and Republican. Completely agree with that, Joey. And as a Republican, you who has been asking questions in good faith, you are welcome here, Joey, and I am glad you are here. Would you be able to tell me why you consider yourself a Republican? And if anybody sees the response and I miss it, please pin it in the chat. Free Will Fit says, are you capable of critiquing your own party and admit you have cognitive biases? I admit that I have cognitive biases in the sense that every human being has cognitive biases, but 100% I am capable of critiquing my own party. The problem is, the issues with the Democratic Party are like a flat tire. The issues with the Republican Party are like the car fucking exploded from C4 from within. You know, so is it really worth the air coming out of my lungs to criticize the Democratic Party when the fucking whole fucking car has been exploded on the Republican Party? Seems sus. Seems sus. Ah, Blackbird, you're too sweet to me. Isaac asks, is there any of Trump's policies that you agree with and support? So I like this question because it calls out exactly what I was referring to earlier when I was talking about the two different ways that we judge the political parties, where I don't know if anybody asks Republicans these questions, like is there anything that Biden did that you can agree with kind of questions. And the things that the Republican Party are doing are so unbelievably psychotic, fascist, corrupt, criminal, etc. Why do I need to point out the tiny little silver lining in their policies in order to prove my bipartisan bona fides? You know, if somebody is stabbing me in the throat, do I have to say that they have nice eyes? Do I have to admit that? You know, it doesn't seem productive to me. But yeah, getting rid of the penny, signing I think it was called the Restart Act or the Fresh Start Act in his first term. Yeah, I think those are okay, you know. Let's see here. Joey says, strict border, taxes going down. I live in New Jersey and it's a shithole. Okay, Joey, let's talk about the border and let's talk about taxes going down. So first of all, let's talk about taxes. I'm assuming that you are not a billionaire or a millionaire, Joey. And so the Democratic Party is the parties whose policies will actually bring down your cost of living because they believe in taxing the wealthy and not taxing people like you and me. They believe in universal health care, which would make your cost of living go down. It may make your taxes go up a little, but the amount of money that you were saving by not having to have health insurance will more than make up for that. It'll be a net positive for you by a lot. Now, do you believe the things that I just said? They're accurate, but it just depends on how far down the right-wing rabbit hole some people are that I can tell them facts and they just won't believe it. So let me know what you think about just the taxes part of that. I am looking forward. Joey says, I live in New Jersey and taxes are way higher than most states. Yes, that is accurate, Joey, but you're also getting more in New Jersey than they are in other states. Like New Jersey has better healthcare outcomes and has better education outcomes because of the taxes that you are suffering under. Where you could move to a red state that has lower taxes, but your public schools will be worse, your healthcare outcomes will be worse, your roads will be worse. You kind of get what you pay for, And I know that sometimes, depending on where you live, you don't really necessarily see those benefits, but they are there. I'm talking more specifically about sort of like the federal policy of what the politicians want to do. I'm pretty confident. I don't know too much about New Jersey state politics, but I'm pretty confident that all of the Democrats who are in charge of setting tax policies in your state, if they could wave a magic wand and say the rich people pay way more in taxes and you pay way less, they would. But political realities sometimes get in the way of that. So Joey, let me know what you think about that. Joey says the roads suck where I live, to be honest, compared to Florida and North Carolina. Okay, but again, not. I don't think you're getting my messaging here, my guy. Like the Democratic Party wants to make it easier for you to live, like make cost less for you to live. There are greater taxes that you pay in other ways in red states than you do in New Jersey. If you want more specifics about that, please send me a DM. We don't have to go. You gotta give me an opportunity to research some of this stuff so I can pull some specifics for you. I'm giving you generalities because this is what I have on hand at the moment. Sophia says, if there were to be universal healthcare, do you think there should be limits on what it will pay for? Yeah, I guess elective surgeries. If you want to have a facelift or something, I don't think that we should be paying for fellas to get calf implants and Brazilian butt lifts and things like that. But yeah, for everything that is medically necessary, I think everything should be paid for. Alrighty. Joey says, I agree with you, to be honest, that we rank higher with schools and hospitals and stuff like that. All right, there you go, Joey. Fantastic. But what I'm asking you is, do you believe that the Democratic Party is trying to increase your standard of living and decreasing your cost of living by taxing the rich? Do you believe that that is the Democratic platform? Do you believe that the Democrats have done this in the past on the state and local level? Because that's my main argument for voting for Democrats is the Democratic Party wants to tax the rich. The Republican Party is increasing the cost of living on all of us so they can cut taxes for the rich. Let me know what you think about that. Alrighty. Pad Ragin says, two sides of the same coin? No. The platforms are different. The politicians are different. The outcomes are different, both on the state and federal level. I have way more evidence of that if you would like it. JP, that's funny, but I'm not going to read it. Josh Sarah says, strict border control in Jersey. What those New Yorkers getting in? That's very funny. Average Joe says, especially considering how many Democrats take money from right-wing donors. That feels like it was a second part of a question. Ooh, let me get to that one in a second, Average Joe. That is a great question, and I want to read it, but I'm a little behind on my TikTok comments. Ray Paul says, this high-pitch beta, I don't think I have a high-pitched voice, but go off, King, wants to import the third world and make us pay for it. Congratulations, that's not a question. Scrolling down to the bottom, Pad Ragin says, I know, but Biden screwed it up by his Zionism. 20 million people didn't vote. Pad Ragin, I completely agree with you that the Biden administration's policies towards Israel were abhorrent. And before the election, I tried to make a case to everybody on my live streams and everybody that I saw in person that there are worse versions of Zionism than what the Democratic Party was doing during the Biden administration. And nobody listened to me, so the Republicans won. And now we are seeing it. We are seeing we are seeing more Zionism. We are seeing more genocide. We are seeing more war crimes done by the Netanyahu administration and more support from the American government. So I believe that it would have been possible to push, and it's possible that the Harris administration would have been better on this than the Biden administration, but I believe that we could have pushed them to be good on this issue. Not just better, but good. Whereas it is getting worse by the day under Republicans. So yeah. The parties are different, right? Pad Ragin, let me know. Scrolling down to the bottom of the TikTok comments, Dionysus says, I think Trump should have accepted defeat against Biden, and this could have saved the life of many something. I don't really know what the end of that sentence is. All right. Pad Ragin, I'm still looking for. Yeah, Pad Ragin, what do you think about my Padrin? Padrin, what did you think about my whole monologue about how it's still worse under Republicans than it would have been under Democrats? Let me know what you think about that. Santina says, do you believe in multiculturalism even if it aligns with Zionist and rich donor interests? I mean, I don't know. Multiculturalism seems like one of those words that's just like generally believed to be a positive thing, you know? Like, can we not learn and live and hang out with different cultures in the same place? Like, don't you love being able to get tacos and a banh mi and pizza, like all within the same block, and having friends who are Vietnamese and Mexican and Italian? So remember the foods that I said. Sophia says, I live in Alabama and taxes are really low here, and it seems to work decently well for us from what I've experienced. You know, Sophia, we were literally just talking about this in our little private DMs where I was asking you about maternal and fetal death rates in Alabama. And you were like, they're really bad. You know, and they're some of the worst in the country. And that is directly related to how low the taxes are in your state. Do you not see the connection there? Pad Ragin says, of course, it is obvious. So then why are you on here, Pad Ragin? So then why are you on here making the both sides argument? It doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me that you would not be advocating for Democrats when they are better than Republicans on that issue, even if you don't like how Democrats are on that issue, and also knowing that we could have pushed the Democrats to be better on that issue. It seems kind of sus to me. Padron seems pretty sus. Sophia says, but I think those rates are due to the way abortion laws are written rather than taxes. You know, no, Sophia, this was before Dobbs. Before Dobbs, Alabama still had one of the worst, if not the worst, maternal and fetal death rates in the country. Can says, because Padron is an accelerationist. That tracks, honestly. Like, there's a certain, I'm pretty well able to suss out when people are here with agendas, and I kind of figured his, you know, based on the things that he was saying. Padron says, I could not force myself to vote blue, I wrote in. You know, Padron, I do not believe that your specific vote is the thing that caused us to be suffering under the Trump administration right now. But hypothetically, if it were, would you feel bad? Would you feel bad that you couldn't bring yourself to vote blue? And now Renee Good is dead, and her children and her wife are now suffering? Do you feel bad about that? Would you feel bad about that? If the election came down to your vote, and you could not force yourself to vote, it just would have hurt that you're, God, it would have hurt. But Good and Pretty would still be alive, along with a bunch of other people that ICE has killed. Let me know what you think about that, Padron. Viking Dad, she caused her own death. Congratulations, that is a bootable comment. You are out of here. All right, let me get over to Average Joe's question. I have been making him wait way too long. Given how quickly the Democratic legislators capitulate to Republican actions and the difference between the positions of Democratic voters and Democratic legislators, doesn't it feel like the Democratic Party is just controlled opposition? Especially considering how many Democrats take money from right-wing donors. Disagree, Average Joe. So hard I disagree with that. Disagree so hard on that. Honestly, we're at, I can't believe we're at an hour 15, but that's too, I disagree with that so hard, but I don't have the energy to go through all the different reasons why I disagree on that. Let me try to get through, because I dropped some stuff on this guy over here in TikTok, and so I want to get to that, but I also want to see how this guy responded to that thing that I said. So yeah, give me a sec. Give me a sec. I might not have the energy, but give me a sec. Let's see here. Ron says, love how you beat people who don't agree with you. Typical libs suppressing speech. Congratulations, Ron. You're out of here, too. All right. Padrin. Let's see here. Padrin says, 20 million did the same. I feel horrible. So it's so sus, Padrin, that your answer is so unbelievably sus. Because I'm asking you, in a hypothetical situation where your vote did this, would you feel bad? And you start by saying 20 million people did the same. You're trying to cover your actions by saying a lot of other people did it. I am asking you about a hypothetical situation. And so you say you feel horrible. Great. If you could go back in time, knowing what you know now about the Trump administration, if you could go back in time, and again, in this hypothetical situation, your vote is the vote that changes, that makes it a Democrats own the government versus Republicans own the government. Could you bring yourself to vote for Democrats in that situation? Let me know. Burke Hamilton says, who do you support? Democrats. Padron says, I tried to respond to 2 questions at the text. All right, well, so you would, Padron. So you would. So then why are you an independent, Padron? Why are you an independent? Why are you on here talking about both sides? Why are you on here talking about Zionism? If you were admitting that the thing that you did was wrong, and that if you could go back in time that you would vote for Democrats still, why are you pounding the drum of both parties are the same, vote independent, Biden was a Zionist? That's really sus, man. That is really sus. All right, Joey says, know people who are libs and they called me fascist when I'm willing to talk about it. I'm really sorry about that, Joey. The only thing I don't know if people are doing this to you in real life. If they are, I apologize for that. But if it's mostly happening or exclusively happening online, I would ask you to ignore it. Because I do not believe that the majority of people who are calling you fascist are real. That's just me shooting from the hip. Padron says, nothing is wrong with Dems, just the support for genocide must stop. I mean, I agree with you. I don't agree with you that nothing is wrong with the Dems. There are problems with the Dems, you know. And I agree with you that we should stop supporting the genocide. But that's really different from what you were saying above, my guy, above. Yeah, Joey, I'm really sorry about that, man. I'm really sorry. Okay, Santino says, do you think Trump is going to slow down the deportations because his donors want him to? I don't. I don't believe that. Sophia is not answering your questions, Mur. We got to focus up, man. Lock in. We are here. We're doing this here. We are not ask people in the chat questions to try to own them. Okay, Vix Dis says, when is the date when we go to... Not answering that. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Percival says, support for Israel seems to be rampant in both parties. How is it being attributed to only Dems? I think it's worse than that, Percival. There are a record number of Democrats who have been voting against sending more money and weapons to Israel. And yet, support for Israel is only attributed to the Democratic Party. It's like we are seeing here, specifically, an example of how narratives are shaped and formed and shoved down our throats to tell us that both parties are the same, or the Democratic Party is shit, or whatever. Mur, I don't care what your reason is. You were spamming the comments. It was annoying me. This is not about protecting her. It's harder for me to do my job if you put 1,000 times a question that she is not answering. Nathan says, if both Democrats and Republicans are corrupted, how do we fix our nation's government? I think the first step, Nathan, is we need to recognize that there's a difference between how corrupt the two political parties are and which political platform is pro corruption and which one is anti. Because the legislative history and the current platform of the Republican Party is pro corruption, making corruption easier to get away with, harder to catch, things like that. The Democratic Party is flawed, has had some corruption scandals in it, but the foundational platform of the Democratic Party is to take money out of politics, to end the corruption in politics, to end billionaire parasite capture of our political systems. P.S. Locally says, do you think the reason Trump sides with Israel is because former PM of Israel was also in the files? I think that that's potentially a part of the motivation, but I think the bigger issue there is just that they have coinciding motivations. It is in both of their political benefits to support each other. And so they do. Dianus says the Dems receive more money than from billionaires. That is inaccurate, Dianus. You live in Italy, so, I'm going to ask you not to speak on this with any kind of authority. But there are a lot of people in America who believe that lie as well. But it is inaccurate. 75% of all billionaire political donations go to the Republican Party. Sunshine Wildfire says, yes, put the least bad party in power and then keep pressure on them to be ethical. I think we can go even further than that, Sunshine Wildflower. I think we can primary the Democrats that we don't like and replace them with better Democrats. Joey says, can they just release the files already fully and charge the people in it, both libs and MAGA? I would love that, Joey, but your political party, the Republican Party, is keeping that from happening. How do you feel about that, Joey? How do you feel? Have you been voting for Republicans? Are there Republicans that you have voted for in government right now who are keeping that information from the public? Let me know. Right. Nurse Ratcheted says, Midas revealed from the files where the draft of J.E. death announcement was written a day before he died. Nurse, I saw that article, but it did not come from a source that I know to be accurate. So I put that in the maybe pile, and I need to see more confirmation from other sources before I can say that was 100% accurate. Sophia says, how do you think we should make legal immigration easier while also ensuring we know who's coming in? Great question, Sophia. I think, number one, we need to hire more immigration judges and asylum judges so that we can verify claims and do background checks and vetting and stuff like that. But yeah, more specifically than that, I don't have the policy prescriptions. I think that worker visas can and should potentially work towards citizenship status. For every year that you get that you commit no crimes or no traffic violations, even, potentially you can be petitioned by other people in community to help your application or stuff like that. What are the things that are the advantage of having immigrants in this culture? Let's, incentivize them to become citizens. So yeah. My number one thing that I can point to where that is, in regard to that is hiring more immigration and asylum judges, where the Trump administration just fired a whole bunch. So literally doing the opposite of what we should be doing. P.S. Locally says, did you hear about MAGA cutting immigration judges? Thoughts? They're not trying to solve the problem. They're trying to keep the problem so that they can run on it as a political issue. What up, Doe says, skipping the line, don't grant you access. Nobody is advocating for that. What up, Doe? Please stop arguing straw men. Charlie says, all they're hiding, the stuff they've shown is just the surface. We need to get stuff done. It's Republicans that are hiding it. I don't know what to tell you guys. Fletch Lives Again says, can the congressman that got to see the unredacted files tell the public what is redacted? Yes, I believe that he is legally capable of doing that. Padron says, I think America needs to experience and see the real vile Republicans to appreciate Democrats. you know, Pattern, I used to have that belief as well, but I have seen the Republican Party drop the ball and fuck things up so many times, and America never seems to learn that lesson. And they never learn that lesson partially because billionaires put so much money into propaganda that makes people feel like both parties are the same and that voting doesn't do anything. And that, you know, and constantly judging the Democratic Party by this unbelievably high standard, you know? And in fact, I suspect that you are part of that, that you are part of that agenda, you know, even though you've changed your tune now. All right. CS says media literacy needs to be taught in school 100%. Joey says, and I disagree with the people blocking the files on the Republican side. But did you say, I'm not voting right now because I'm trying to get more info before I vote? All right. Totally fair, Joey. Very happy to hear that. Diana says, how old are you? I'm 47. Charlie says, I'm sick of it. The elites are making fun of our peaceful protests. It isn't working, and it won't. That is inaccurate, Charlie. The protests are working. There's a reason why we have Tom Homan in Minnesota instead of Third Reich, One Third Reich Greg Bovino. There's a reason why there are fewer ICE and CPB in Minnesota right now. There's a reason why Republicans are saying, oh, Trump shouldn't be posting videos of the Obamas as monkeys. You know, it's because the work is working, Charlie. And I know how frustrating it can be, but the work is working. There's a book, I don't know if you're open to this, Charlie, but there's a book that I'm reading right now that I think you would really enjoy called Giving Up is Unforgivable. And no tea, no shade, I'm not saying that you are giving up. I'm just saying I'm finding it very inspiring. It is helping me stay in this fight, even in the realm of being worried that the things I'm doing are not actively helping. Nikki says, I also think it's so irresponsible that they're traumatizing us with the files to arrest no one. 100%, Nikki. Totally agree with that. Alrighty, scrolling down the bottom, scrolling down the wall, and Padrin says, good one calling him 1/3 right. That's not my joke. I'm just repeating somebody else's joke. All right, Average Joe. I respect disagreement, but I believe there's more evidence to support my opinion. Too much for the Twitch chats, LOL. The moral of the story is where our Venn diagrams overlap. Vote in the primaries. Yes, 100%. So my general argument to you, Average Joe, is that we don't see progress not happening under Democratic administrations, and we don't see Democrats not fighting Republicans during their administrations. There are different outcomes when Democrats are in charge. You know, they do allow billionaire dollars to water down their pro-worker advocacy bills, but they have them at least, and they pass them still. You know, we weren't able to get the big beautiful bill, but we were able to get the Inflation Reduction Act, which was something that Republicans did not want, right? So yeah, you know, I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it even a little bit. Don't even know if you're still here, but that is my I eventually got to your comment. I apologize for making you wait so long. You know that you're the GOAT. I'm so glad that you're here. Nikki says, honest question regarding Epstein. How does someone get that evil? Like, what's the gain? I mean, there are psychopaths in the world, that people who don't have that part of their brain that says, I shouldn't do this because it would hurt another person. They only see the world through, all right, here's how I can become successful and wealthy and get everything that I want. And so I don't really give a shit if I hurt a bunch of people in the process. Uncle Hippie says, wasn't Biden at his worst still sharper than Trump at his best? I don't know. I read Jake Tapper's book. He really was suffering from, you know, old age, mental decline. You know, I think that Trump, when he was young, was a worse person who had worse ideas than Biden at his oldest. But if we're saying sharp, you know, like able to sort of like respond and talk coherently, like, I think that's an open question. I think it's debatable. And you know how I don't want to give Trump any credit for things, but, you know, being more eloquent than Joe Biden is not the glaze that people might think it is. Sophia says, I think immigrants help the nation, but also mass immigration without knowing who's coming in can harm us. 100%, Sophia. Completely agree with that. You will never hear, at least I don't believe you will hear, a Democrat who's not just like a random person on the internet advocating for open borders. I don't think that that's a thing, you know. So yeah, I think we agree on that. Okay. D says, how can we get Trump and his gang out? By doing the work. D, by doing the work. And if you want to know what the work is, check out my Discord. I've got a link in my bio. It'll take you to the thread that's called The Work, and that's how we do it. That's how we get Trump and his gang out. Charlie says, I've been reading the files and watching the videos and images, and this is just so much worse than the regular government. It's so much deeper. Completely agree with that, my guy, but we can fix this. And we actually are currently in the process of fixing this. Our voices, our work is the reason why Trump felt it was politically impossible to not sign the Epstein Disclosure Act into law. Bert Hamilton says, what are good sources you use to stay informed? There are two pillars to this. One, avoid right-wing media. We have all the data we need on this. Right-wing media is the least accurate of all news media. And two, get it from a variety of sources so that you are avoiding individual bias. So use a news aggregator like Ground News or the Reddit political feed. If you have the time and the energy to just like really comb through all the data, try to have a little bit of foreign, a little bit of centrist, a little bit of progressive, a little bit of legacy, a little bit of independence, etc., etc. All right, Joey says, I watch both Fox News and CNN, etc. I mean, all you're doing is harm by watching Fox News, Joey. Like, you're not getting valuable information. I don't believe that legally it's allowed to call itself news anymore, Joey. So I would say check out Ground News. You can replace CNN and Fox with just looking at Ground News because it gives you right-wing news and it gives you left-wing news. At least you would be getting, sort of like the breakdown of the bias and everything like that. Let me know what you think about that. Anything Debating says, do you think James Calrico could be the answer for 28? I mean, I like him better as a senator than I do for president right now, but, not saying no. I would kick him out of bed, Joey says, I watch more things than Fox and CNN. That's totally fair, Joey. But again, I think you would be better served to check out Ground News than Fox and CNN. And just remember, Joey, that I said this, that we have crunched the numbers. And right-wing media like Fox is the least accurate. The people that exclusively watch it are getting the worst version of the news. They have less of an idea of what's going on in the world than people who don't watch the news at all. So I guess my question to you would be, why would you watch it? If you know that what you're looking at is the most inaccurate thing that you could be watching, that is news. Bentley says, is it possible to be Republican and not support Trump? 100%. See you later, Dianis. Great to see you. Thank you for being here. Can says, who's your pick for 28? Normally, I don't like answering this question because I'm trying to keep people focused on 26. But I am falling in love with Chris Murphy, and I know that nobody gives a shit about Chris Murphy. I like Chris Murphy a lot. He's my new Elizabeth Warren. Like, I like politicians like that. Or, like, they're just doing the fucking work, Ready. Let's see here. Ken says who? Exactly. Chris Murphy, senator from Connecticut. I love me some Chris Murphy. Okay. The Screwball says, what examples of where right-wing news gets it wrong, where others get it right? I'll give you one very specific example of the Screwball. The Dominion voting machine story. The Dominion voting machine story was cooked up by Fox News and widely reported on, and it was so obviously fake that they had to pay almost $1 billion in restitution to Dominion Voting Machines, the company. Oh, guys, I have no idea how I did so much time here today. I usually conk out so much earlier. Average Joe says, my first point would be the Democratic Party's dedication to stomping on progressive candidates. Yeah, I do think that there's an issue with leadership there, but I don't think I don't think leadership is the Democratic Party. I think we can be specific. I think we can say Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are doing this. Ready. S-Smek says, I don't know anything about Polish politics, so sorry, Smek. All right, Brooke says, what do you think about the Turning Points USA show? The culture war has been lost. Right-wing media, you have lost the culture war. I'm sorry, but the Bad Bunny Super Bowl show versus Kid Rock half-assedly lip-syncing his own lyrics, you lost, my guy. Like, I used to have a joke about this in my stand-up where I was like, if the culture was on the right instead of on the left, that might change my mind, Because right now the left has the best of everything. We got Beyonce, we got Hamilton, we got the state of Hawaii, one of the most beautiful places, heaven on earth, If that was the opposite, if right-wing people had all the best books and movies and music and musicals and food, chefs and athletes and everything, then maybe I would be right-wing. But yeah, unbelievable, man. The difference in those shows. Sophia says, why do you support stricter rules for, also less strict rules for, why do Dems support stricter rules for vape legislation, but supporting fewer rules for broccoli? A really good question, Sophia. So I don't know the specifics. I don't know where the Democratic Party comes down on this. Like, I haven't seen the bill around vaping versus what is legally allowed in states where you're allowed to garden, But as far as I know, the vaping industry is pretty unregulated and pretty dangerous. Where when you go to a gardening store, there will be the warnings on the label that were like, this can cause this can cause this. I think the issue that we have with vaping is that it is unregulated and that we're not seeing those same warnings there. Additionally, I think you can make an argument that there is medical necessity for availability to gardening that I don't know if that same thing exists in the vaping world at all. And to me, that gives it much more legitimacy as an industry. But again, yeah, I don't really know the specific, what do you call it? The specific legislation that you're referring to where Democrats are going harder on vaping than they are on gardening, Leslie, I would argue that gardening is regulated. Like there are a bunch of regulations surrounding it. Let's see here. SCL says, "What's your opinion about Charlie Kirk? Charlie Kirk should not have been assassinated. I'm against all political violence. That does not change the fact that he was a liar and a con artist and toxic to the culture and politics." Alrighty there. Let's see here. We got LeBron on the left. Damn straight we do. Joey says, I watched both halftime shows, but in my opinion, Green Day should have done the halftime show. Didn't they do that? I thought they did do the halftime show. They were there, weren't they? That's what I heard. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Take it easy, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. I got to do the rest of my outro. Screwball says, is John Fetterman still an outro? Oh, Jenny said they did the pre-game. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. All right. I shredded my pants says, liar, how? Do explain. Would you like me to forward you a link of all of the times that Charlie Kirk lied about things? I shredded my pants. I'm happy to do that if that is something you're interested in. Ready. All right. Anything debating says James Talarico AOC. They both don't take super PAC money, and Texas could go blue. Potentially, yeah. Yeah. I'm not gonna do the work for that, but if that happens, I'll be happy. All right, everybody. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I know that we are all suffering right now. But if you have the means and you have the desire, the mechanisms are there. You can be a super fan on TikTok. You can send gifts on TikTok. And a very special thank you to all of my super fans and the people that sent gifts, not gifts on this live stream. Don't send me any dick on the live stream, guys. You can also become a subscriber on my Twitch channel. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe for free. Costs you $0, helps me out a ton. And I think you can also do like emotes. I think that's like the Twitch version of gifts on TikTok. You can also join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. All of that support helps keep the show going. Special thanks to all of my regular supporters, Grimmicus, Robert, Shannon, Carmine, Patrick, Dan Blackroyd, the two Seans, Lauren, Triska, Cliff, and It's the Rocketeer. Regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. If there are any questions that you have that I was not able to get to or that come up later, don't be shy about reaching out. You can hit me up through my DMs. My DMs are open. You can email me through my website. You can hit me up on my Discord channel. I want to be a resource for you guys to be more informed and more involved in politics. So if there's any way that I can do that, hit me up. Use me and abuse me. Use me until you use me up. I love the Discord also because there's threads there for recommendations for books and podcasts and also great organizing things that you can do to try to help what's going on in our country right now. That's the work, guys, is doing something to help. And we all need to be a part of this. We all need to be a part of the coalition of people who are going out there and trying to help and trying to replace our current government with a better one. We can do it if we all work together. And the more people who are doing the work, the less work that we all have to do. You know, I love coming on here and engaging with you guys all the time, but if I didn't have to do this, I wouldn't. I do it because I want to help, because I see what's going on, and I don't want my daughter to grow up in a world like this. So let's all do the work, guys. Let's all do the work. Anything Debating says, based on who's supposed to run in the primary, who would you vote for? I don't know if anybody's even announced yet Anything Debating, so I do not know. All right, Triska says, why Tallarico, not Crockett? She is great, very strong voice. I love Jasmine Crockett, not throwing any shade at her whatsoever. It's a really close game for me between Tallarico and Crockett. The reason why I think Tallarico is Democrats have an uphill climb in Texas. And so I think we need a more electable candidate. I know that nobody knows what electable is, but I think when you have a straight white guy who is like wasn't he like a preacher or something, or like a registered, wasn't he like an ordained minister or something? Like, he's of the cloth, and his message is one of unity and inclusion. You know, I think that's a stronger message to run in Texas than Jasmine Crockett's, who I'm a huge fan of, and I love the message. I love the messenger. I think she's great. I just think that if we want to win in the general, I think James probably has a better shot of it. That's just me. You know, again, I think they're both great. All right, everybody, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you again for being here. Do the work. I Sharded My Pants has not responded to my comment about I can send him all the lies that Charlie Kirk said. So, kind of interesting, in my opinion, that he doesn't care to hear that. So, do the work. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Let's all have a great week together. I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.